My name's Ethan. I'm 34. I live in Denver with my wife, Maya, and our daughter, Sophia. She's 8, brilliant, thoughtful, carries her sketchbook everywhere. I run a modest interior design studio downtown. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. Maya's an electrical systems engineer. We make it work. I didn't come from wealth, but my parents act like we did. Natalie and Charles Monroe, the kind of couple who care more about their image than the people in the photos. My father owns a high-end furniture store. My mother collects luxury handbags and distant smiles. And my brother Daniel, 2 years younger, self-assured, shallow, and somehow always the one to watch. In their eyes, I was never the investment worth making. When I graduated from the top of my architecture class, Natalie said, "Well, at least you didn't drop out." When Daniel scraped into community college, they threw him a going-away party with a string quartet and canops. I got used to standing at the edge of every family photo, sometimes cropped out entirely, sometimes just invisible. I didn't resent Daniel. He didn't need to fight to be loved. I did and lost. Still, I built my life, quietly, piece by piece. I found Maya brilliant, funny, grounded. We married, built a life out of coffee-stained sketches and half-painted walls. We had Sophia. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment near a park. On weekends, we'd sit by the window and watch kids play. We weren't rich, but we were whole. If I have one regret, it's this. I didn't get full health insurance in time. We were still juggling contracts, still recovering from delayed payments. And I thought, we're young, we're healthy, we'll be fine. I had no idea how wrong I was, or how far people would go to protect their illusion of perfection, even at the cost of a child's life. It started with a cough. At first, we thought it was seasonal. Sophia still smiled, still asked for Maya's famous mac and cheese every night. But the coughing got worse. It clawed through her sleep, left her clutching her chest at 3 a.m. We took her to a local clinic. The doctor said mild bronchitis and gave us antibiotics. But I saw the look in his eyes. 2 weeks later, Sophia whispered to me, "Daddy, my heart feels like it's racing too fast." We rushed her to the hospital. The emergency room was all white light and plastic chairs, CT scans, X-rays, blood tests. 3 hours later, a doctor walked in holding a folder thick enough to feel like a threat. "There's a mass in her left lung," he said carefully. "It's pressing against her airway. Most likely benign, but it needs to be removed. Soon." "How soon?" I asked. "Within 72 hours. The cost? Just under $100,000. I couldn't speak. Not because of the number, but because I realized I had nothing left to delay. No more excuses. We'd waited too long. We had about $30,000 saved. Just enough to feel like we were responsible, nowhere near enough to save our daughter. That night, while Maya sat next to Sophia's bed whispering stories to keep her calm, I did something I swore I never would. I called my parents. Natalie answered. Her voice was light, like she'd just stepped out of a spa. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I told her. Told her everything. I didn't ask for all of it. Just something. A loan. A bridge. Anything. She paused. Just for a beat. Then, "This is very unfortunate timing. Your father and I are hosting our 40th anniversary celebration next week. The venue's booked. Guests have flown in. It would be awkward to change plans now." I held the phone tighter. "Mom, Sophia could die." Her voice turned cold. "And what do you expect us to do? Cancel everything? Make a scene? We've already spent a great deal on the event." She called it an event, not a marriage, not a celebration. An event. I hung up, not because I was angry, because I couldn't hold the phone anymore. The next day I went to see them in person. I showed up at the Monroe estate with Sophia's medical records in a manila envelope. The place was glowing floral centerpieces, gold-rimmed champagne flutes, a jazz quartet tuning up in the backyard. It wasn't their anniversary party. It was Daniel's engagement rehearsal. I found Natalie in the foyer greeting guests. "Mom, I said, voice steady. I need 5 minutes. She glanced at my shoes before answering. Now? Really? It's about Sophia. Her eyes darted to the guests behind me. Not here. Not like this. I opened the envelope. Read this, please. She didn't. She just shook her head and said, We already paid for the catering, the dress, the band. Don't embarrass yourself. I turned. Charles was by the bar. I walked straight to him. He barely looked at me. This isn't the place, Ethan. It wasn't the place when I graduated. It wasn't the place when I got married. It's never the place, is it? Daniel laughed, loud enough for others to hear. You didn't plan, and now you want us to cancel our lives for you? I looked at him, really looked, and realized for all his charm, Daniel had never actually grown up. He had no empathy, only optics. You're not just ignoring me, I said quietly. You're abandoning her. Charles turned away. Don't embarrass us further. That was the last thing he ever said to me. I left, walked down the marble steps I once climbed as a kid, hoping someone would notice me. This time I didn't hope. I just walked. When I stepped out of my parents' estate that evening, everything felt surreal. The warmth of string lights wrapped around trees, crystal flutes clinking in celebration, laughter carried over a jazz tune. Meanwhile, Sophia was lying in a hospital bed, pale and breathless. I sat in the car for a long time, not crying, not shaking, just still. I think something broke in me that night, not from pain, but from finality. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even disappointed. I was finished. Finished hoping they'd ever choose me. Finished asking people with full wine glasses to hear the sound of a breaking heart. I returned to the hospital just past midnight. Maya didn't ask what happened. She saw it in my face. She reached for my hand, and I finally let the tears come silent, slow, not dramatic, just the kind that empty you out. We'll figure this out, she whispered. We'll save her, with or without them. The next morning we got to work. We sold everything that wasn't nailed down. Maya posted our living room set online. I listed my computer, the ergonomic chair I spent a year saving for, even the drafting table that had seen every major project I'd ever designed. The hardest to let go was Maya's truck. We bought it for our honeymoon, drove across 5 states in that thing. She didn't hesitate for a second. By the 3rd day, we had $29,000. It wasn't enough. I called old colleagues, clients, former classmates. I didn't ask for handouts. I explained the situation and said anything helped. Some didn't reply. Some sent apologies without actions. But a few? They reminded me why I hadn't given up on people altogether. Chloe, an old friend from design school, now a music teacher, sent $500 with a message. I know it's not much, but it's everything I have this month. Sophia's going to make it. Then Jordan, a new employee I had only hired 4 months ago, came into my office with an envelope. She placed it on my desk and said, I was going to buy a new laptop. I think Sophia needs it more. Inside was $320. I couldn't even speak. Just hugged her. The kind of hug where the gratitude is too big for words. People the first hadn't spoken to in years shared our fundraiser. A neighbor dropped off $40 in cash with a note. I lost a son once. I hope you don't have to. Even so, we were still nearly $40,000 short. The clock was ticking. I could hear it in every labored breath Sophia took. We started exploring high-interest loans, predatory ones, the kind you don't recover from. It didn't matter. I just needed time, one more day, one more miracle. And then, on the 4th evening, that miracle knocked on the door. Lucas and Ben Maya's dads. They'd driven in from the southern suburbs, where they'd lived in the same small house for almost 30 years, the kind of home where nothing matched, but everything felt safe. They hugged Maya first, then me. Come to the house tomorrow morning, Lucas said, his voice lower than usual. We want to show you something. I didn't know what he meant, but the way Ben squeezed my arm firm, unwavering, I understood something was coming. The next morning their home looked emptier. No couch, no paintings on the wall. The smell of coffee was still there, but it clung to silence. Lucas handed me a cup. Ben handed me papers. I opened them. Property transfer contract sale price, $136,000. My hands froze. You sold the house? Ben nodded. Sophia doesn't need prayers. She needs a future. But this house is everything: your retirement, your life. Lucas smiled. We can rent. We can downsize. We can rebuild. But we can't replace her. My throat tightened. These weren't my parents, but they were more family than anyone who shared my DNA. Within 48 hours, with the funds wired and paperwork signed, we had the full amount. I called the hospital. They scheduled the surgery immediately. The operation lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of pacing hospital floors, of drinking bad coffee just to have something in my hands, of gripping the bracelet Sophia had made for me on my birthday, the one with neon beads that spelled Dad forever. The surgeon came out just past 5 p.m., still in his scrubs, mask lowered. It went well, he said. She'll recover. You got her here just in time. I didn't collapse. I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes and felt the weight of 1,000 unsaid prayers fall away. That night, in a sunlit recovery room, I held Sophia's hand and watched her chest rise and fall in soft rhythm. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe we might be okay. But I also knew this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a very different life. The surgery was done. Sophia was safe. And yet, I didn't feel relief, not in the way I expected. It wasn't a flood of joy. It was something quieter. A pulse deep in my chest, steady, relentless, unshakable. I hadn't just saved my daughter. I'd crossed a line. Something inside me had shifted permanently. I would never go back to begging, never again kneel before people who let champagne flow while my daughter suffocated. From the moment I walked out of that house, I became someone else. I started waking up at 4:30 every morning. Sophia was still recovering. Maya was holding things down at her job, and I had no time to waste. I overhauled my design studio from top to bottom. Management, budgeting, marketing. I retaught myself everything I had once outsourced or avoided. By day, I met with clients and surveyed job sites. By night, I designed, invoiced, negotiated, and emailed. On weekends, I studied real estate and branding. No more waiting for contracts to fall into my lap. The first breakthrough came 2 months later, an eco-cafe renovation in Capitol Hill, then a spa chain in the suburbs, then a boutique hotel project in Aspen. One job became 5. 5 became 15. My tiny design studio, once sharing a hallway with a laundromat, started hiring. We expanded. We moved. Within a year, I signed a $1.3 million design contract for a luxury apartment complex in downtown Denver, the same city where I used to deliver blueprints on foot. And people noticed. Modern Habitat magazine ran a feature titled Ethan Monroe, the designer who turned rejection into vision. I didn't love the title, but I understood it. In the interview, they asked what drove me. I looked into the camera and answered honestly. My daughter almost died because I waited for support that never came. I learned then that I needed to become the one person she could always count on, no matter what. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. But truth, when spoken clearly, doesn't need fingers pointed. It echoes, and it lands exactly where it's meant to. A week after the article went viral, I got the call. Daniel. He sounded less smug than usual. Tense. Quiet. You've stirred up a lot, you know that? I stayed silent. You didn't have to make it public. I didn't mention you, he scoffed. You didn't have to. People aren't stupid. I let the silence stretch. Then he asked, low and flat, was it worth it? I answered plainly. Every word, every step. He hung up. Within days, the dominoes started to fall. My parents' store, Monroe Interiors, was flooded with 1-star reviews. Clients canceled custom orders. Vendors pulled out quietly. Nobody wanted their brand tied to the family that left a child to die so they could sip rose in designer shoes. Daniel's fiancée, the one with the $330,000 engagement ring, wiped their photos from social media. 3 days later, she called off the wedding and moved back in with her parents. I didn't celebrate. I just watched. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't orchestrate anything. I didn't post exposes or make threats. I told the truth. And the truth walked farther than I ever could have chased. Then one afternoon I received a letter. Handwritten, yellow paper, Natalie's penmanship. Careful, as always. Ethan, we've lost everything. The store is closing. Charles is selling the house. Daniel is struggling. I know we made mistakes, but we're still family. If there's any mercy left in you, please help us. We need $200,000 to keep the house. We'll pay it back, please. Mom, I read it 3 times, not out of disbelief, just to let it sink in. The same people who couldn't postpone a party had now lost the house they once used to keep me out. Did I feel joy? No. Satisfaction? Not really. What I felt was something colder, cleaner, like the page had turned, and I was the one holding the pen. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with it. I thought of Sophia. I thought of Maya's dads wrapping dishes in old newspapers after selling their home for our daughter. I thought of Daniel laughing while I begged for help. Then I made a decision. 2 days later, I asked my assistant to set up a meeting. I had the funds wired into a locked briefcase. When they arrived at my studio, Charles looked older. Natalie wore a worn-out coat instead of her usual silk and cashmere. They barely spoke. I opened the suitcase and pushed it forward. This is $200,000, enough to cover your mortgage. Natalie exhaled, almost a sob. But I held up a hand. Before you take it, you need to understand something. They looked up. From the moment you walk out that door, we are no longer family. No calls, no messages, no visits. You'll get this help once, not out of love, but because I don't want anyone, even you, on the street. That's it. Charles nodded slowly. Natalie cried. They took the money. They didn't say goodbye, and I didn't ask for one. That night, I told Maya. She didn't praise me. She just said, "You did what was right, not what was easy." And that mattered more than anything. Because power isn't about taking back what you lost. It's about knowing what you'll never give away again. After the meeting in my office, the briefcase, the goodbye without words, I didn't hear from them again. No calls, no letters, no guilt-soaked voicemails. And that silence, it was peaceful. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood something. Sometimes, survival looks like walking away. Sometimes, family ends with a locked door and a signed check. And sometimes, the ones who save you aren't the ones who raised you. Sophia recovered better than anyone predicted. The doctors said kids are resilient. They weren't wrong. Within 2 months, she was back at school, back to sketching in the margins of her math worksheets, back to asking existential questions over cereal like, why do clouds float if they're made of water? Maya and I watched her with a reverence we never voiced, not out loud, but it was in everything: the way we kissed her forehead longer, the way we stopped saying later and started saying now. Maya's dads, Lucas and Ben, moved in with us, temporarily after selling their home. We found a small rental on the outskirts of the city. Not big, but warm. Enough space for Sophia to have her room, and for all of us to share dinners at one table. And then one morning, as Sophia played in the backyard with a makeshift fairy house made of twigs and moss, I looked at Maya and said, "Let's build something permanent, a real home, for all of us." She nodded. No hesitation. The house came together like our lives had, piece by piece, mistake by mistake, love in every nail. A modern cabin style on a hillside just beyond the city. Wide windows, natural wood, a wraparound porch that caught the sun just right in the morning. I didn't design it alone. Sophia sketched out what she called secret corners and dreamy doors. Lucas chose the kitchen layout. Ben picked the garden spot. Maya insisted we leave room for a second child just in case. 6 months after the foundation was poured, we moved in. No ceremony. No champagne tower. Just us. Family. That winter, Sophia gave me a hand-drawn birthday card. It had stick figures me, her, Maya, Lucas, and Ben all holding hands in front of our new home. On the back she wrote, "Thank you for saving me, Daddy. I love our forever house." I kept that card in my office, framed next to the first business license I ever filed. People ask me if I regret anything, if I miss the Monroes, if I ever wonder what could have happened if they had said yes that night, if they had chosen to help. But here's the truth. Their no became my beginning. Their rejection gave me clarity. Their indifference gave me drive. And their silence gave me space to find something better. A few months after we settled in, I went back and bought Lucas and Ben's old house. Quietly, through an agent. They never asked for it back, never hinted, but I knew it mattered. That house held their whole history, their love, their sacrifice. I waited until Ben's birthday to hand them the keys. Lucas cried. Ben didn't say much, just hugged me longer than usual. That night, we celebrated with homemade cake and bad wine and laughter echoing off new walls. Sophia fell asleep on the couch, curled against Maya. The TV played something we weren't watching. The fire crackled. I looked around and thought, this is what legacy looks like. Not name, not blood, but love that shows up when it's hardest. Then, one afternoon, the phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, picked it up. It was Natalie. Her voice was softer than I remembered, and thinner. Ethan. I didn't know who else to call. I didn't answer. She continued. The bank's foreclosing on the house. Charles, he signed a second mortgage after the store closed. We're out of time. I still didn't respond. We only need $200,000. Just enough to delay, to stay in the home a little longer. I let the silence hang. Then, calmly, I said, "Do you remember the last time I asked you for help?" She was quiet. Then, "Yes, I remember. And I'm sorry." I wasn't thinking straight. We didn't understand the gravity. I cut her off. My daughter was dying. And you chose hors d'oeuvre. She broke down. I know nothing can make it right. But we're family. No, I said. We share DNA. That's it. Then I added, more gently than I expected, I'll send the money. But this is the last time. You'll receive it in person. And after that, we're done. She agreed. Desperation doesn't argue. 2 days later, I handed her and Charles the money in a quiet conference room. They looked different. Smaller. Like statues weathered by too many storms. I gave them the check. And one condition, when you leave this room, I will no longer be your son. This is a gift, not a bridge. There will be no next time. Natalie wept. Charles nodded. They left without a word. I watched the door close behind them and felt free. Now, every morning, I wake up to sunlight pouring over the hills and the smell of pancakes drifting from the kitchen. Sophia's laughter echoes down the hall. Maya flips through design blueprints beside her coffee. Lucas prunes the garden. Ben plays the radio too loud. And I just sit there sometimes, hands wrapped around a warm mug thinking, I lost one family, but I built another, one that shows up, one that chooses each other, not for appearances, not out of duty, but love, real love. And that was worth everything. Story 2, the family reunion was supposed to be just that, a reunion. Burgers on the grill, kids chasing each other around the yard, laughter echoing under the summer sun. I showed up with a decent bottle of wine and my usual cautious optimism. What I didn't expect was to leave wondering how long it would take to recover from what they'd just done. It all unraveled the next morning. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through news headlines, when a routine check on my bank account hit like a freight train. My balance, $487. I'd had over $14,000 yesterday. I blinked, hit refresh. Again. Same number. No fraud alert, No suspicious login notification, just gone. I barely had time to process it when my phone buzzed group text from my sister, Talia. Brunch leftovers in the fridge. Also, thanks for covering us again. Again? I called her immediately. She answered, laughing, like nothing was wrong. Relax, Logan. You always say you've got us. You drained my account. She didn't deny it. It's not draining if we're planning to pay it back. Chill. My jaw locked. We? Yeah, me and Caleb. Rent was due. We needed groceries. Basics. My sister had always been the chaotic one, jobs that never lasted more than 6 months. Boyfriends with worse track records. A kid she barely kept up with. Caleb, her husband, was just as bad. Charming, manipulative, irresponsible. I used to pity them, help them with bills more than once. But this wasn't a missed payment. This was deliberate. How did you even get into my account? You left your info on Mom's desktop, she said casually. Maybe don't log in and leave it open next time. I went still. You're blaming me. You're overreacting, she said. It's not like we're strangers. We're family. Does Mom know? She was in the room, Logan. She even said you wouldn't miss it. That silenced me. I hung up. The next few hours blurred. I drove to my apartment, slammed the door, and sat at my kitchen table staring at a blank wall. It wasn't just about the money, it was the entitlement. The absolute lack of remorse. By noon, Caleb called. Didn't even try to sound sorry. We figured you'd be mad, he said, but you're doing fine. Good job, no kids, no mortgage. You can afford to be generous. I didn't offer, I said, but you always help. What's different now? What's different is I finally saw it for what it was. That night, I got a message from my cousin, Jordan. Heard about what happened. That's seriously messed up. You okay? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I knew if I said a single word, I'd scream. This wasn't the first time I'd been the family's safety net. It started subtle. Talia's rent once, then her phone bill. Then Caleb lost his job and needed a short-term loan. Then they needed help buying a birthday gift for their daughter. Only I never agreed to any of this, they assumed. Because I never said no. You don't have the struggles they do, Mom always told me. You were blessed. That means you should share. Translation: we gave you life. You owe us your paycheck. I paid off their credit card debt once, $3,500. They didn't say thank you. They just stopped mentioning it, like it never happened. So when they smiled at me at the reunion, passed me a paper plate of ribs, and made a toast to Logan, the reliable one, I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. The fallout started 2 days later. Talia called me in tears. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then Caleb texted, "Bro, call her. It's bad." I picked up on the 5th ring. "The power company's cutting us off," she said. "We're behind, like way behind. They gave us a final notice, Monday. So you want more money? It's not just us," she snapped. "We helped Mom too. Remember Dad's car broke down last month?" "No one told me, because you always say no when it's not an emergency." I laughed bitterly. "So now you define emergencies for me?" "We just assumed that I'd never fight back," I said. "That I'd keep giving. That's what you think I'm for, right?" She fell silent. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart racing. Not from anger anymore, but from clarity. The years of being the responsible one, of watching my family chip away at my sanity one excuse at a time, had finally crystallized into something else: resolve. 3 days later, Mom called. No apology, no how are you. Just, we're having a small dinner. You should come. I didn't want to, but part of me needed to see if they'd even pretend to be sorry. Spoiler, they didn't. Talia sat with her arms crossed, Caleb on the couch like it was halftime at a game. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad scrolled on his phone. "You're causing a lot of tension," Mom said. "I'm causing tension?" "We all agreed you could handle it," she said. "You always do. You didn't even ask. We trusted you, Dad said, to do what's right. I stood. And what's right is draining me dry without telling me? Oh, stop, Talia said. You act like we went on vacation. We used it for groceries. I reached into my bag, pulled out a stack of printouts, and laid them on the table. What's this? Caleb asked. Every transaction from my account. Highlighted. Categorized. Labeled. Including the $900 you spent on takeout, the $2,300 for your car payment, and Talia's makeup haul. Her face paled. You checked our accounts? Caleb hissed. I did more than check. I filed a fraud report. And guess what? Talia's voice cracked. You didn't. I did. The room went dead quiet. Then came the knock on the door. 3 times. Loud, purposeful. Caleb stood slowly. Tell me you're bluffing. I opened the door. 3 investigators from the Financial Crimes Unit stepped inside. One held a clipboard, another a tablet. The third looked around the room like he already knew the story. Logan Hart? One asked. Thanks for your cooperation. They turned to my family. You're listed as persons of interest in a case of identity theft and financial fraud. Identity theft? Mom gasped. We're family. Family ties don't make illegal activity legal, the agent replied. Talia burst into tears. Caleb froze. And I just stepped aside as the law finally walked into the living room I'd been carrying on my back for a decade. When I tell people what happened that night, they always ask the same thing. Didn't it feel brutal? Not really. It felt overdue. Watching my family stare down those agents, frozen in disbelief like someone hit pause on their favorite sitcom, wasn't cruel, it was justice. For every time they guilt-tripped me, for every dollar they took without asking, for every fake apology, for every "you're the stable one" line they weaponized like a get-out-of-responsibility card, they thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. The lead agent went over the basics. Names, dates, account numbers. He read it all off like he was reciting a grocery list. Talia kept shaking her head like that would somehow erase the charges. Caleb tried to argue until the agent mentioned subpoenas and bank logs. Then he shut up real fast. You always helped us, Talia whispered at one point, eyes red. Why now? Because helping became expected, I said, then demanded, then stolen. That was the last thing I said before I left. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. Instead, I drove across town to my grandmother's old house. She passed a few years ago, but I still had the key. It was the one place in the world that had never asked me for anything. She used to say, if they ever forget who you are, Logan, you come here. This house remembers. She was right. The lock clicked open like I'd never left. I sat on the couch in silence. No TV, no phone. Just me and the echo of her crochet blanket folded on the armrest. I slept for 11 hours straight. Woke up the next morning to sunlight cutting through the blinds. Brewed a pot of cheap coffee and stood at the window watching a squirrel dig up the flower bed she used to guard like a soldier. For the first time in years, I could breathe. That feeling didn't last long. By noon, my inbox had exploded. First one was from Dad. Subject line, "This has gone too far." It was a 3-paragraph guilt trip. Words like humiliation and family legacy tossed around like confetti. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just shame that people were now finding out. I didn't reply. Talia texted next. They froze our accounts. Caleb's under review at work. Are you happy? You ruined everything over a few payments. A few? She took thousands. Years of sacrifice. Rent I paid. Debt I cleared. Birthday gifts I funded. She was lucky I hadn't charged interest. Still, I said nothing. Then came the voicemail from Mom. Her voice was soft, trembling like a cracked dish. Logan, sweetheart, we didn't mean for it to go this way. Please. We're being threatened with charges. They say we might lose the house. That part stuck with me. They might lose the house. And suddenly, I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter, not vindictive. I just didn't care, because I had already lost something 2 years ago. When they decided I was more useful as a bank account than as a son, 2 days passed. Then came the wild card. A text from Marcus, my other cousin, Talia's half-brother. We weren't close. He was the kind of relative who only said what's up at holidays and vanished before dessert. His message was short. Heads up. Talia's trying to say you approved the transfers. Said you gave permission. There's a lawyer involved. Watch your back. I nearly laughed. Even now, even with everything collapsing around her, she was still trying to twist the story. Still reaching for the narrative where she was the victim, and I was the mean brother who turned on his own. That same night, I called my lawyer. I want to press full charges, I said, and file for a restraining order. He didn't even blink, already drafting it. Not every message I got was hostile, though. A week later, I opened my email and saw a name I didn't expect. Elise, Caleb's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in years, but her email, it was short and honest. I know this probably means nothing right now, but you were right. I used to think you were cold. Now I think you were brave. Thank you for standing up, for yourself, and honestly, for the rest of us too. I sat with that message for a long time. Brave. No one in my family had ever called me that. They called me stubborn, overdramatic, cold, but not brave. And yet, that's exactly what it had taken. A few nights later, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. It was Talia. Her voice was small, not like her usual I'm right and you're overreacting tone. This was broken. I know I messed up, she started. I didn't think it would go like this. Caleb's been suspended. Mom cries every day. Dad won't even look at me. I didn't say anything. You had the power to ruin us, she said. And now you did. No, I said. I just stopped letting you walk over me. Silence. Can you stop it now, please? Drop the charges? I'll do anything. That would have been the moment, right? The redemption arc. The big sibling forgives the mess-up family ending. But this wasn't a movie. This was my life. And I remembered exactly what she said that night after the reunion. We needed it more than you. So I said, no, Talia, you made this mess. Now you live in it. And I hung up. That night, I made pasta. Listened to an old playlist from college. Sat out on the back porch with my coffee and didn't check my phone once. No one texted. No one asked for help. No one demanded I fix their emergencies. For once, it was quiet. Not the kind of silence that makes you feel lonely. The kind that feels earned, peaceful, free. 3 months passed. The investigation continued. I moved new apartment, new number, new state. No more surprise visits, no more guilt trips. My boss noticed how focused I was at work, offered me a promotion. I took it. Funny how your life improves when you stop paying for everyone else's chaos. Then one morning, a letter showed up. No return address. Inside, a check for $1,200 and a short note. I left him. You were right. I was scared, but watching you walk away gave me courage. This is for what you paid for. Ellie's tablet, her school clothes, the rent. I know Caleb never said thank you, but I am. Thank you for being the example I needed. Elise, I read it twice. Then I cried, not from sadness, but from relief, because for the first time, someone in that family saw me, not as a wallet, not as a scapegoat, just as a person. People ask if I regret it. No, I regret waiting so long, but regret turning off the money train, pressing charges, reclaiming my life, not even a little, because sometimes choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival. It's been 6 months since that night. Since I stood in my parents' living room and finally said no. Since the agents walked in and my family's fantasy world cracked down the middle. They still don't get it. Mom sends handwritten letters now. Neat script, blue ink, 10 pages each. I haven't opened one in weeks. They always say the same thing. We never meant to hurt you. You were just the one we could always count on. Exactly. That's the part they never understood. Being counted on isn't love, it's labor. It's silent sacrifice. It's making sure your sister's rent gets paid before you replace your own tires. It's nodding politely while they talk about how broke they are with phones newer than yours and nails freshly done. It's being the backup plan no one thanks, the emotional mule. The fallout came quick. Caleb lost his job. HR flagged him for financial misconduct. No one said the investigation was the cause, but timing speaks louder than words. Talia tried to open a new account and got flagged. Bank froze it before she could even deposit a check. Mom and Dad are now facing foreclosure because, surprise, the house was refinanced without me knowing. They called it a shared decision. They used my info to co-sign. And that unlocked another door I hadn't planned to open, but now I had to. So I pressed forward. More fraud reports, more calls, more cold, official paperwork that made me feel numb and strong at the same time. At one point, I asked my lawyer, "Is this overkill?" He didn't hesitate. "You gave them grace for years. This is overdue." And still, there was silence. Not the kind that screams tension, the kind that feels clean. I stopped waiting for them to say sorry. Stopped checking if they were still lying about me online. I even deleted the apps where they posted their pity parties. No more screenshots. No more digital rage. Just nothing. I'd wasted too many years trying to be the better person. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. Turns out, peace isn't loud. It's not fireworks or grand endings. Peace is sleeping through the night without checking your account. It's grocery shopping without doing mental math. It's not flinching when your phone rings. Peace is making dinner and knowing no one's going to beg for money while pretending it's casual. One night, I ran into someone from high school at a bookstore. We weren't close, but she recognized me. "Hey, I saw something about your family online. That whole thing? Wild." I nodded, expecting judgment. Maybe gossip. Instead, she said, "Good for you. Most people don't get out." She meant it. I could hear it in her voice. And I walked away from that conversation feeling lighter. Because yeah, I got out. Out of the guilt spiral. Out of the financial chokehold. Out of the fake loyalty trap where family means shut up and give. They say you can't choose your family. And maybe that's true. But you can choose how much of yourself you're willing to lose trying to keep them happy. And I was done losing. They used to say I was heartless, too logical, too cold. But they never saw the nights I lay awake, calculating how to make rent after bailing them out. Never saw me skip meals, so I could afford both their needs and my own. Never saw the panic in my chest every time Talia called and started with, "Hey, I was wondering if you could do me a huge favor." No, I wasn't heartless. I was breaking. And now, I'm whole. I moved into a small apartment by the lake. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I work less. I sleep more. I started going for walks again just to hear the wind move through the trees. Some mornings I fish, even if I don't catch anything. I watch the water shift and I let it remind me that nothing stays stuck forever. Not people, not pain, not even family expectations. Sometimes Elise sends pictures of her daughter, Ellie, holding the tablet I bought, grinning with missing front teeth. Sometimes we talk about meeting up, not out of obligation, but because we want to. She left Caleb, started over. She says I gave her the push, but the truth is she did it herself. I just reminded her she could. Last week, I got one more message from my dad. Just one sentence. "When you were born, we thought you'd be the one to hold us together." And maybe that's true. But it was never my job. I was born to live, not to carry a crumbling house on my back. And if that house falls now, it's because they hollowed out the walls and set fire to the foundation, not because I walked away. Some people still ask, would you go back if they changed? But change isn't an apology. It's not a clean kitchen when the house is already burned down. So no, I'm not going back. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel guilty for saying that. Because I am not their bank. I am not their emotional sponge. I am not the fixer of generational messes I didn't create. I'm just me, and that's finally enough. If you've ever been the strong one, the reliable one, the one they always expect to show up and never ask how you're doing, let me tell you something. You don't owe them your sanity. You don't owe them your silence. You don't have to light yourself on fire just to keep their lives warm. You're allowed to walk away. And when you do, that silence you hear, that's not loneliness. That's freedom. Story 3. It was Christmas Eve, and I should have known something was off the moment I stepped inside my parents' place. Snow still clung to my boots when I looked up and saw the new family portrait above the fireplace, professionally printed, gold-trimmed frame, all polished and purposeful. Everyone was in it. Well, almost everyone. There was Lorraine, my mom, beaming in that red cashmere blazer she pulls out every holiday like it's a sacred tradition. Greg, my dad, mid-grin, holding a scotch like someone who only smiles when there's a camera or a caddy nearby. And front and center, my sister Blair, hair curled, expensive sweater, fake laughing like she was on a lifestyle blog. And me, I wasn't moved to the edge. I wasn't out of focus. I was removed, cleanly, like a sticker peeled off a scrapbook. It was surgical. No one mentioned it. I stood there for a few seconds, long enough to feel the kick in the gut. Then Lorraine shouted from the kitchen, "Dinner's almost ready." Like we were just one big loving household, as if nothing had changed. I walked in, nodded my hellos, and let Blair graze my cheek with one of those performative air kisses that rich girls do when they don't actually want to touch you. "Oh good," she said, swirling her wine. "You made it." Like I was a distant cousin, not her sister. Dinner was as hollow as ever. Greg carved the roast like it was a Food Network audition. Lorraine gushed over Blair's glow twice. Nobody asked me what I'd been up to. Nobody asked where I lived now. The only question I got was about my little hatchback, a polite way to say they had zero clue about my actual life. I smiled, nodded, and let them fill in the blanks however they wanted. Blair unwrapped her gift vintage Cartier. Lorraine said it wasn't fancy, but the price tag was peeking out from the velvet box like a little betrayal. I did the math. I'd need to skip rent and groceries for a week to afford it. Me? I got a mug that said Mom's second favorite. Real subtle. I excused myself after dessert, claimed I was tired. Lorraine offered me the guest room never your room, beige sheets, one dusty lamp that flickers when you breathe near it. I closed the door behind me and sat down. That's when I pulled out the envelope. Ivory cardstock, gold seal. I'd planned to give it to them in the morning after the stockings, after the staged joy. But that portrait, that photo snapped something in me. They didn't forget me. They deleted me, quietly, strategically, like I was a PR risk they couldn't spin. I turned the envelope over in my hand, felt its weight. I wasn't angry, not in the screaming into a pillow kind of way. I was tired of pretending they just didn't understand, tired of convincing myself that I was just too sensitive. The house creaked with familiar sounds. Greg's snoring, Lorraine talking about the good plates, Blair laughing in that breathy, fake influencer way. And I lay there, not making excuses anymore. In the morning, I would hand them the envelope. No shouting, no scene, just facts, just truth, and I'd let the silence speak louder than anything I could say. I stayed in that guest room longer than I needed to the next morning. Not because I was tired, believe me. I barely slept. It was the kind of rest where your body lies still, but your brain rewinds everything. All the years, all the silence, every time I told myself, they mean well, and swallowed the lump in my throat. I waited because I didn't want to walk back into their Hallmark Christmas. Sure enough, when I finally stepped into the kitchen, Lorraine was plating eggs, like she was on the cover of some fancy brunch magazine. Greg was at the table, scrolling his phone like he was too important to be present. Blair, barefoot in silk pajamas, sipping almond milk from a wine glass. Hope the guest room was comfy, Lorraine said without looking up. It has a personality, I said, pouring myself some coffee. She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. They did the whole breakfast thing. Like always talked about Blair's upcoming trip to Spain, her art showcase, how proud they were. No one asked me what I was working on. No one asked if I was seeing anyone. No one asked anything. So I said nothing. And that envelope? Still in my coat pocket. I thought back to the years leading up to this. When I graduated high school and got into my top choice university with a partial scholarship, I asked if they could help cover the rest. Greg said the timing was bad, something about recovering from their bathroom renovation. That renovation? Heated floors and a smart mirror. Meanwhile, Blair got a new car for her 18th birthday. Leather seats, built-in GPS, a bow on top. I got a card with $20 and a sticker that said, "You're going places." And I did. I left, took 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, graduated with honors, moved cities, started over, no calls, no offers of help. When my apartment flooded 2 years ago, I replaced my mattress with one I found on Craigslist. Meanwhile, Blair was on Instagram posing under waterfalls in Bali with captions like "grateful to grow." I used to wonder if maybe it was me. Maybe I wasn't as lovable, not as soft, not beige enough. Maybe if I smiled more, joined a sorority, learned to pretend better, they would have seen me. But then I remembered the time I won first place at the state science fair. They didn't come. They texted "nice job," and that was it. Blair once got a call back for a shampoo commercial, and they threw her a party. So, no, it wasn't me. Earlier this year, something shifted. I wasn't digging for drama. I just needed proof of address for a new job and ended up at the county records office. Bureaucratic nonsense. But as I waited, I spotted my name on a property file, an address I didn't recognize. I assumed it was a mistake. Curiosity, though it's persistent. One document led to another. Title deeds, tax records, emails. And suddenly, the story I'd been told about Grandpa's will started to crack. The one where he left a few things and some cash and the rest had been used up for the funeral. Except, no, he left me a property. Sole beneficiary. A triplex rental unit near Old Elms Park. Fully paid off. Title in my name. Greg and Lorraine had been collecting rent on it for years. While telling me there was nothing left, I didn't get angry. Not right away. I just sat with it, let it settle. Because once you know the truth, everything starts to make sense. The selective love, the silences, the way they smiled through their lies like it was tradition. After breakfast, they gathered by the tree. Greg had his mug that said "Best Dad." Blair was unwrapping a Fendi scarf like it was divine intervention. I sat quietly, pulled the envelope from my coat, and placed it on the coffee table beside the crumpled wrapping paper. No one noticed. Not yet. But they would. They always do, just a little too late. Lorraine finally picked it up, looked at me. "What's this?" "Something I wanted you to have," I said. Greg smiled like I'd handed them a scented candle. "You didn't need to get us anything." "I know," I said, "but I wanted to." That got their attention. Lorraine started to open it. I said, "I'd prefer if you didn't do that here." So obviously they did. I watched her hands tremble slightly as she unfolded the pages. Greg leaned in. At first, they didn't react, just paper shifting, eyes scanning. Then something changed. The air thinned. Greg's hand dropped. Lorraine blinked fast and too much. Blair looked up. "What is it?" They didn't answer. I stood up. "That," I said, "is a copy of Grandpa's will. The real one. The one where he left me the triplex." Greg stiffened. Lorraine tried to speak, but I kept going. "The one you said didn't exist. The one you used without telling me? Collected rent on? Renovated? Lied about?" Greg stood. "Where did you?" "Public records," I said. "Emails. Tax filings. A very helpful lawyer." Blair looked around, stunned. "Wait, What rental? The one I used for my shoot? Yep, I said. That one. Lorraine reached for me. Sweetheart, it's complicated. No, I said. It's not. You stole from me. You erased me. You let me think I was the burden while you used my inheritance to fund her lifestyle. Greg rubbed his temples like he was the victim of a headache I'd given him. You're always so dramatic, he muttered. I laughed short, sharp. I'm dramatic? You committed inheritance fraud. But sure, let's talk about my tone. Lorraine's voice dropped to that delicate pitch she uses when she's losing control. We just thought you weren't ready. You mean you hoped I'd never find out? Greg pointed a finger. If you walk out, I already walked out, I said. Years ago, you just didn't notice. And then, calm as anything, I said. Effective immediately. I've reclaimed the property. Legal ownership is mine. Tenants have been notified. Rent now goes through me. Your access revoked. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that throbbed. Blair stared like someone yanked the rug out from under her, and she was still mid-fall. I grabbed my coat. Lorraine whispered, You're still our daughter. I paused at the door, looked her in the eyes. No, I said. I'm the person you decided to crop out. And now, you're just people I used to know. And then I walked out. The air outside hit sharp and cold, but it was clean. I didn't cry when I got in the car, didn't scream, didn't even put on music, just let the silence wrap around me like something sacred. There's a strange kind of peace that comes when the people who made you feel invisible finally see you, just not in the way they expected. 3 weeks went by before the first message came through. It was from Lorraine. Hi, sweetheart. We think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we talk? Hope you're well. Love you. No punctuation. Just love you, hanging there like an apology that lost its nerve. I didn't reply. 2 days later, another one. Please don't let this one thing ruin everything. Blair is very upset. Greg is trying to stay calm, but you know how he gets when he feels blindsided. Ah, yes. Not when he lies. Not when he steals. Just when he's caught. I let it sit unread. Then came the voicemail. Greg's voice, sounding worn but firm, like the time he told me not to touch his tools because I'd probably break something. I deleted it. I didn't need to hear it to know what was inside, some mix of guilt and authority, twisted into a warning wrapped in nostalgia. Blair finally messaged, So you think this makes you the winner? Take the house. Don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family. Followed by another the next day. They're thinking about selling the condo. That's what you wanted, right? That one I read twice. Not because I felt guilty. I didn't. But because it confirmed what I already knew. That house, my house, was their safety net. 3 units, fully rented. Covered their mortgage, vacations, Blair's tuition, even a medical procedure Lorraine swore was just skincare and good genes. When I took it back, everything started to buckle. I heard from neighbors that Greg picked up part-time consulting again, aka calling old contacts and begging for scraps. Lorraine was working at some boutique downtown now, folding cashmere she used to buy. Blair moved back in with them. Her art collective collapsed after the landlord raised rent. Apparently, she launched a GoFundMe for a new creative chapter. It raised $83. 2 of those dollars were from an ex of mine. Don't ask me why that part made me laugh. It just did. Meanwhile, I was fixing up the place. It was rough at first. Stale air, faded paint, a cracked window that whined in the wind like it remembered being ignored. But it was mine. I hired a contractor, patched up the walls, replaced the fixtures, donated most of the furniture, kept one chair, a navy blue armchair I vaguely remembered from when I was a kid, before everything turned quiet and sharp. The tenants, they were good people. I dropped their rent by $50 each. One of them left a thank you note on my door that said, You're the first landlord who treated us like people. That one, I framed it. I started sleeping through the night again. No creaky stairs. No passive-aggressive comments about how I never call. Just quiet, plants on the windowsill, real food in the fridge. And one day, I found a letter in my mailbox. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter. Lorraine's handwriting on the envelope. I held it for a long minute before opening it. Not because I thought it would be different, but because I wanted to mark the moment. It smelled faintly of her perfume, powdery, floral, and artificial. The letter was 2 pages, neat cursive, careful phrasing. We didn't know you felt this way. It wasn't intentional. We only wanted what was best for everyone. My favorite line, "You've always been so strong. We didn't realize you needed anything from us." That's what people say when your silence made their life easier. When your strength was something they leaned on while calling it independence. She closed with, "We hope someday you'll come home. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can be a family again." No mention of the money, no mention of the years, no mention of cropping me out like I never existed. I folded it up, slid it into the drawer with the other quiet things I don't need anymore. Never replied. That was the last time she reached out directly. A few years passed. I ran into our old neighbor at a bookstore once. She looked surprised. "You still managing that rental?" I smiled. "I live there now." She hesitated, then nodded. "I heard your parents had a rough time of it." I just nodded. "Well," she said, "you look happy." I was. I am. Still in the house, not out of spite, not because I couldn't afford to leave, but because it's peaceful. It's mine. I grow tomatoes in the backyard now. Repainted the front steps. Every room feels like air after a storm. On the mantle, I keep a photo. It's just me, standing in front of the house, holding the keys. No one else in the frame. No one I had to crop out. Once in a while, I still get a card. One showed up last Christmas. No return address. Just thinking of you. Hope you're well. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because I stopped needing anything from them the day I realized they were never going to give it. Not love. Not honesty. Not even space. So I made my own. They cropped me out. I handed them the truth. And now, I have a life where I'm not edited, muted, or filtered to fit their comfort. I don't imagine apologies anymore. I don't rehearse speeches. I don't dream about being chosen, because I chose myself. And that's the story.